have faithfully shown up every week for years. Nobody watching you would ever guess what you are actually carrying. You never missed the meeting. You never dropped the ball. You never let anyone see you struggle. Not really. You have a way of holding it together that other people admire and even ask for advice. How do you do that? You call it faithfulness. You call it strength. Most days you call it, it's just who you are. But underneath all that, you are still bent, and you have gotten so good at walking that way that you honestly forgot it was never supposed to be permanent. There's a woman in scripture who answers to that description with her whole body. And I want for us to sit with her today because most people rush past what actually happened to her. Luke tells us she was in the synagogue, not once, not occasionally. This was her pattern, her rhythm, her whole life. 18 years bent over, physically unable to straighten herself, and still she showed up. She did not stop worshiping because worship had become hard. She did not stop gathering with the people of God because her body embarrassed her. Whatever was bending her did not stop her feet from walking through that door week after week, year after year, for the better part of 2 decades. 18 years, long enough for a child born the year it started to reach adulthood by the time this story happens. Long enough that most of the people in that synagogue had never known her any other way. To them, she was not a woman who had once stood straight and then bent under something. She was simply the bent woman that had become her entire identity in that room. That is real survival. Now, I'm not diminishing it, and I don't want you to either. Whatever this woman was carrying physically, spiritually, we are not told the full cause. She did not let it exile her from the presence of God either. And that took some doing. That took years of choosing to show up anyway. Have you had to do that? Just keep on showing up anyway? But hear me carefully, because this is the whole point of what I want to say to you today. Surviving something and being free from it are not the same thing. And 18 years of showing up bent had likely convinced everyone around her, maybe even convinced her that this was simply who she was. Not a woman going through something, the bent woman. The one who always came in slightly behind the others, slightly lower, slightly apart from everyone, standing up straight around her. People would have gotten accustomed to seeing her like that. It was just natural. Here's what strikes me most about the scene. Nobody in that synagogue was asking for her to be healed that day. Not the people around her, not even she herself. As far as the text tells us, she came the way she always came, expecting the day to unfold the way it always unfolded. She was not there hoping for a miracle. She was there because showing up was simply what she did. But Jesus is the one who sees her. In Luke chapter 13, verse 12, it says, when Jesus saw her, he called her to him and said, woman, you are loosed from your infirmity. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was straight and glorified God. Wow, that must have been quite a day. I want you to notice the word he chooses, because it is doing more work than we usually give it credit. Not healed, loosed. Healed speaks to a body being repaired, something broken being fixed. Loose speaks to something else entirely, something being untied, a rope, a knot, a binding that had to be released before her body can finally do what a body naturally does when nothing is holding it down anymore. She was not simply sick. Scripture is explicit about this. Verse 16 calls it exactly what it is. A woman Satan had bound for 18 years. Bound, not merely afflicted, bound. And bound while still faithful. Bound while still present in the house of God every single week. Bound while still worshiping, still singing, still showing up on time. Because you can survive under anything for a very long time and call it a normal life. And no one, including you, ever actually names it as bondage. That is such a sobering thought. It simply becomes the shape you learn to walk in. It becomes so familiar that straight starts to feel foreign, even threatening. Ask yourself, honestly, what shape have you been walking in? Now, what defeated you not what defeated you completely, not the thing that took you out entirely, because that is usually easier to identify. I'm asking about what you adapted to, what you built a whole, faithful, functional, admirable life around carrying. People will most likely be saying, well, she's such a great person. Look at her situation, but she just functions so normally. And people have come to accept that. What you built a whole, faithful, functionable, admirable life around carrying quietly, the same way she built 18 years of showing up around the back that would not straighten. The exhaustion you have learned to call normal energy levels, the way you brace before certain conversations and call it being prepared, the vigilance you carry into every room and call it discernment. You may have survived it. That is not the question. And I'm not asking you to minimize how much strength that it actually took to survive it. The real question is whether are you still bent under it right now, today, and whether you have been quietly calling your endurance freedom simply because no one else around you has ever called it what it actually is. Notice, because the room did not receive what happened to her as well, the leader of the synagogue became indignant, more upset than a healing had happened on the Sabbath than that a woman had just walked out straight, standing up for the first time in 18 years. Think about that response for a moment. A miracle happened in front of him, and his first reaction was concern about the rule that had technically been broken to produce it. Sometimes the people around you get more comfortable with your bent posture than your freedom. They know exactly how to relate to you bound. They know your patterns, your limitations, the shape you have always been in the room. And they do not know how to relate to you loosed, standing straight, taking up different space than they used to seeing you occupy. That discomfort in them is not a reason for you to stay bent. It was never meant to be. Jesus called her a daughter of Abraham, someone who already belonged, who had every right to be loose on any day, including the Sabbath, including a day when the rules said otherwise. He did not ask her to prove she deserved it. He did not make her wait until she had earned enough faithfulness points across those 18 years, though she certainly had plenty of evidence to offer if he had asked. He simply called her forward and spoke the word that untied what had been tied up for nearly 2 decades. Well, just thinking about that is just amazing. You do not have to keep surviving what God is already ready to lose. Not everything you have adapted to living with was ever meant to be permanent. Some of what you are calling your personality, your normal, your just how I am, or was actually bondage wearing the disguise of your everyday life. Now, if you're ready to stand up straight, I want you to write in the comments below, I'm listening. And if this teaching met you where you are, consider subscribing because we are walking through a season of stories just like hers. Women who found freedom they did not know they were still allowed to ask for. Isn't that amazing? Some of us are walking with bondage that we do not know that we are free to, and we are allowed to ask for something different. So stay with me in this series as we continue the story you live from, and as we continue building into a journey where we eventually come to the place that says, you know what? I don't need to be like this anymore. So be sure to comment in the comment section. And there are some free resources that I have on my Encounters at the Well devotion that you can sign up for. So please take advantage of all those things within the description. So God bless you and thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the video series number 4 as we go on the stories that we live from. God bless.